On-Screen Manitoba is an innovative membership-driven association that leads, builds, and represents the Manitoba screen-based industry.
In general, in my world, in documentary filmmaking, we kind of have four types, kind of branches of possible ways of organized pitching. The first one is the forum, which you saw the big picture of, which are the two main ones are Hot Docs and IDFA in Amsterdam. Pre-selected filmmakers with their ideas get 15 minutes to sit in the front of the room. How many people have attended one of these key industry events? Okay, so a good portion of you know about it already. And you have the 15 minutes. 7 of those minutes are for you to do whatever you want to get your idea across. There's a holy grail table of commissioning editors from around the world who all have money or commission, a strand, so therefore should have money. And they have 8 minutes to ask questions back. And you go through trying to navigate that and get your idea across and see what the response back is. This is a little bit of the kind of the scariest one, and it's also the most kind of corporate process of pitching because it costs money to get in, and often you need to have a commissioning editor or somebody with money already attached to you. So it's often not like at a seeding level. It's more at a semi-advanced level. But the opportunities in the forum session are the greatest for actually hitting a home run, experience that eureka moment where you can find 3 or 4 broadcasters internationally aligning, agreeing with you, coming in right then, and your film will go into production in the next quarter, so to speak. Most pitches are taking place around festivals, so it's quite important that you become an active participant in the documentary community by joining DOC and knowing where these events are taking place and having friends that are attending these events as buddies to help you gain access to the people who are at the festivals, because the festivals will organize the forums, they'll organize the next one here, which we call the rendezvous. Mostly, again, happens at Hot Docs, but happens at almost all the festivals, and they'll even will be happening here where you can do the meet the decision maker. You just have to make sure to know about it, do your homework. So, I mean, now with websites, there's no excuse not to know literally everything about anything. So if your desire is to find out where to meet, because in documentary, broadcasters have the money. Like if you're looking for money really, traditionally speaking, you need to get a commission from a broadcaster. That's really the main trigger. Even if you're going theatrical, most of the money still gets from the broadcasters, and you do another version if need be. And broadcasters trigger most of the envelopes in the way the system works. So if you don't have a broadcaster, you can't. You're either not eligible for the fund, or you're not eligible for the marketplace, or it doesn't trigger other credits and grants or whatever that are out there. So in that sense of the reality, I'm focusing today a lot on that type of stuff. So the rendezvous is like a one-on-one. And here you usually have 15 minutes as well. You could even be less. And it's also called the meat market at Sheffield. And again, they look at the ideas and they pre-select kind of who you would be able to meet. But it's much less competitive to get access to than the forum, because there's just a lot more slots available. And sometimes you'll be meeting at a round table like this with 3 or 4 broadcasters, or like it could be one-on-one as I put there. And it's kind of the same thing as the speed date, but I just added it on so I'd remember to talk about it. And so these are just where you have to prepare a little bit differently because they're more intimate. And it doesn't have in some ways, it doesn't have the benefit of being quite so organized where there's like that official start time and you have exactly this much time and you've prepared a whole lot for it and you got to go up in front of the people. So it relies a little more on you being like, how are you going to control this session that's going on with the commissioning editor? We'll talk a little bit more about all these things. And then the last one is the cocktail, or the schmooze, or just kind of the hit and run, where you know somebody's there and you really want to meet them, and you're going to find a way to introduce yourself to them in just a general environment. And of course, this becomes a little bit challenging because they're pitched all the time, and it can be annoying, and you don't want to be annoying, but yet at the same time, it's like your chance. You're hearing Gimli, and so is Murray from Knowledge Network. I just outed him. And you really need to talk to him because he's the beacon of light for your idea. And again, it matters a lot on being part of the community, coming to the events, knowing who these people are, what they look like, what their interests are, and how are you going to get to talk to them. And normally the best way is to be introduced by someone who already knows that person. So a lot of pitching is no different than, talking to people the way you want people to talk to you, keeping in mind the manners that your mother or grandmother grilled into you at the dinner table about, how to converse and be polite and stuff like that. And most importantly, in all this, you have to sell yourself. So let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Cross. I'm a filmmaker and a film producer and a university professor all out of Montreal. Have a company called EyeSteelFilm. So when I started wanting to make films, I knew that I wanted to make documentary films. And I knew that I wanted to make documentary films like the NFB films of the day that motivated, inspired me. And that was really the only objective that I had. So I started making a film about street people called The Street. And in the process of trying to get that film made, as my first film, I realized, oh geez, how do you get money? How do you represent yourself? How do you go about doing this stuff? And of course, I took the small steps first, and I focused on the arts councils because they seemed familiar, and I didn't have to be incorporated. They weren't going to audit me. So keep it simple, stupid. That's the golden rule. And I did. And then I kind of went to the film board because they were in Montreal. I'd moved to Montreal. And at that time, the film board was kind of transitioning itself away from its glorious challenge for change past, which was why I wanted to be a filmmaker. And they were kind of embarking on, at that time, a relationship to the TV hour, and that they were going to make TV hours and sell them to broadcasters. And I realized, oh, I don't really fit in. This really sucks. I mean, I still like the Montreal Canadiens, and their team was still doing okay. So, I was in Montreal, but I couldn't really go there. So I decided I was going to start my own production company, and I was going to do what the film board wasn't doing at the time. To me, naive as it was, I'm going to make social point of view one-off feature documentaries, and I'm going to do it with my buddies who want to do the same thing. And come hell or high water, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And that's the best thing I ever did, because then I had an identity. I knew who I was, and I made sure everybody else knew who I was and what I stood for and why I was there. And that allowed or enabled me to get to know all the other people and for them to get to know me. I wasn't like a chameleon, or I wasn't switching with the wind, or wherever the money was, I wasn't necessarily following it. And ultimately, that's a key element of pitching, is, for lack of a better term, like a brand. Like, you need to ask yourself why you're here. Why is it important for you? What is it that you're trying to get made? Not how do I find a bunch of money, but once you know what that is, then you'll find the environment that will help you get your project made. So that's it for me. Oop, what's going on? I think I missed one. It's not showing up. Anyways, let's see, I'll try that one more time. It's just disappearing. Maybe not. So when you're in these formal situations, again, you're a storyteller and you're talking to gatekeepers basically, and there's key points that you just kind of have to do. You have to make sure that you do a good introduction. So let's think about the forum where you're there in the big event. Well, because you have a commissioning editor or industry partner already, usually it's best to let them do the introduction because they know the people at the table. And then the key thing for you as the producer or filmmaker in controlling your time is to make sure that the commissioning editor stays on their notes and stays short, that the introduction is brief and smart and they stop. And you have to be ready to cut them off if they don't, because the buzzer will ring after 7 minutes. It doesn't matter if the commissioning editor or whoever is introducing you, if they drag on, then that's your time. So that's the kind of thing that's important. Now, if you're thinking about it with the speed date type thing, it's much more how do you get control of that table. So if you're going in and you have 10 or 15 minutes and you're going to meet somebody from PBS point of view, let's say, and they start just talking about how tired they are and it's been going on all day and what they really need is some lunch or who knows what, like that's just your time. And how are you going to take control back? So you need to go in prepared for how you're going to open that meeting. So one of the most important things is kind of like setting the tone. And so it's best if you take an assertive position off the top. So it's tricky because you feel like, well, you know, they're the pros and I'm new, so I'm going to sit there and be shy and polite and wait and whatever and not interject. But that's not the way to roll. The way to roll is to go in confidently prepared. And when the time starts, start. Because ultimately that's why they're there and they're looking for the perfect idea. And just take that first step. It's important, it can be hard, but it's necessary. And what you need to do really is to establish to these people what are your strengths. And there's several different subtexts of strengths. First of all, something that's a strength is that you're actually talking to a commissioning editor who has a strand. So, you know, they have a series and they're trying to put something in Storyville or Doc Zone. It needs to, you need to know that what you're presenting to them is something that is relevant to their show. That's a strength. That you're talking to them, you're talking to the right people. You're not just wasting your time. You haven't done your homework. You don't know the difference between Storyville and Doc Zone. And there's a clear difference. You can't pitch the same film in the same style to both of them because either you're pitching to one of them pointlessly. And then it's like, you also want to make sure that you've given them ideas of your own accomplishments, that they know who they're talking to. And if there's something that's kind of urgent about your project that makes it very timely to them, you want to make sure that you get that across. And everything has to be done very brief because you have very little bit of time and they need to have time to reply. And one of the most important things is listening and hearing what they have to say and being prepared to listen to what they have to say. And realizing that the commissioning editor that you're talking to has a lot of experience, and they've listened to a lot of ideas, and they have a lot of insight. Now, they might not might not be suited to you, and you know you have to listen and acknowledge that. And maybe the best thing that can happen is just agreeing to disagree and having a friendly conversation for the rest, listening to what they have to say, and not really like challenging and, oh, you're wrong, and blah, 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 because this is a long-term relationship that you're starting to create. Commissioning editors are the same commissioning editors. They come back. You're going to have other ideas. The number of ideas that you pitch compared to the number of ideas that you get made can be, substantially different. So you will be talking to these people again. So just building that relationship and that familiarity when you're establishing yourself is important. And as important as anything is, and this is a little bit cheesy in the sense that we call it the one-liner, but it doesn't necessarily one line. Some people are able to roll that way, not everybody. But you do need to be able to summarize the idea of your film very clearly and articulately and quickly. And you need to practice that with people who don't know anything about your film. So when you're practicing preparing your idea, the best people to practice it on are the people who watch TV, not the people who make it. Just tell the idea to your mom or to your random friend, and they're going to go, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're talking about. Because half the time, the stuff you're talking about is in the back of your head, and you're like, and then this happens, and then that happens, and you never really ever said in a clear way what the film is. And that's the thing, what the film is about, what it's going to do is really important right off the bat. It's just, I just bought an Air book. And the reason why I bought the Air book is because I was having problems with my back. And I saw because I was looking actually at the tablet, like what that guy's using. What are they called? iPad. And then I saw the sign up there, thinnest laptop in the world. I went, oh, that's what I need. And so I got it. But anyways, it's just important to be able to go in with a way to summarize your film idea in any of these pitch sessions of any kind, from cocktail schmooze to the forum. You just don't have much time. So we did a film called Chairman George. I'll show you the demo in a minute. And basically, we would just say, George is a 50-year-old who works for Stats Canada, lives with his mother, and is the only person in the world who can sing both in Greek and Chinese, and plans to sing at the closing ceremonies of the Greek Olympics in Athens. And then, someone will just say, oh, we don't do sports movies. And then, you go, and then you go from there. You started a kind of a dialogue, or, we don't do performing arts films. And of course, this isn't either of those things. But at the same time that I've set it up where the commissioner can say back, I don't do sports movies, but now we've started a dialogue. At least he knows what I'm talking about, and I know from where he's hearing or she's hearing where I'm coming from, so I can readdress and continue the conversation to emphasize that it's not a sports film, but it's got culture and world travel and boatloads of beautiful girls. So, for instance, we made a film called Spit, Squeegee Punks in Traffic. And on this one of the lines we used, because Roach is the street kid and he has his own camera. Roach's camera smashes the windshield into a million shards of glass, and Daniel's camera records the many reflections of the homeless reality. This gives an idea of it's what it is, I guess. And then one of the films we made, Up the Yangtze, we had several different ones for this one, depending, and because it was in production a long time, but luxury cruise boat motors up the Yangtze, navigating the mythic waterway known in China simply as the river. Or, in the biggest engineering endeavor since the Great Wall, China has set out to harness the Yangtze River, making the world's largest dam and flooding millions of years of civilization. It's more simple, we'd say Hearts of Darkness meets the Love Boat. Or, weirdly enough, and you can tell me what this one means, but it was used, the culture of tourism, the tourism of culture. But they say less at that point, and they're more of a gimmick line than an actual starting point for a discussion. Because if I say to you, you know, tourism and culture, cultural tourism, you're gonna go, yeah, and? So you just don't want to go overboard with talking for 7 minutes and then realize that the commissioning editor's only problem is that they don't want to do anything in China, or something that you, or maybe something that you could possibly have addressed. So that's what I mean when I talk about the one-liner. And the other part of it is you have to realize that you're basically doing public speaking, when the forum is public speaking. So that's one way of addressing. The table, the rendezvous, it's not public speaking, but it's still storytelling. And they're investing in you as a storyteller. Filmmakers are storytellers. So if you're going to really get their confidence, it's going to have a lot to do with the fact that the way you present the film idea to them is coming across as like a good story. So you really want to think that through. Even though you're in documentary and you don't know the ending, you don't really know everything, you still have an idea of the story. You still have an idea of what is it that attracted me to this idea in the first place. And then, okay, so there's the idea, perhaps the subject. And then how did I end up with that person being my character? Those are narrative steps that you've started to understand, and you've made those decisions before you've gone to pitch the story to anyone. That's the story unfolding, how you became interested. So the Spit film, I don't know how it's going to end, but I know these certain steps towards it that I can tell as a story. That I end up with a filmmaker named Roach, and he's got a camera, and he's got this history, and I've got this relationship with him, and we're going to go for the next 2 years, and we're going to explore in this kind of way or that kind of way. And then that's how you're telling the story. So basically, what you got to do is you got to go to the bar, and you got to bore your friends for 15 minutes, telling them what you're working on, and if they keep cutting you off and start watching the sports or going to the bathroom, you know that you aren't telling them anything that they really want to listen to. So, and that's the level of communication and kind of repartee, you could say, that you need to kind of go into presenting your idea to third-party people to try to find, support. Are there any questions? Because you can be asking questions. Are you really sad that this is going to be like, oh my God? So, I mean, in one way, it's really a simple thing. It's essential that you know where you are and what you're doing, which means you have to do homework. It means you have to know what are these festivals, what are these markets, who are these people that are coming together, and the only way you can do that is to go. And festivals like this are the entry points for that, because they're a lot cheaper, they're closer to home, and they're smaller. So it's much easier to, if there's somebody here that will also be at TIFF, Toronto Festival, the difference in accessing and having a drink with them and talking to them about an idea and just starting that whole journey of becoming a filmmaker and expressing your ideas and letting people in the community talk with you about them is much more likely to happen in smaller regional places like this. So there are certain tools that are beneficial. Where there are these bigger forums, there are these industry catalogs created, and all the people, all the broadcasters or funders of different types all have a page with their picture, their bio, the station, the strands, because if you're pitching to someone maybe internationally, you're not going to be able to watch their channels. So knowing that these kind of resources exist and being able to access them and study them is really what you need to be doing. And another good way to get to know what's going on is all the major film festivals have, let's just call them the academy, basically the festival university, where maybe it's 30 or 40 different people, usually entry levels, junior, freshman and sophomore, if we use kind of an American university term, level filmmakers go to these festivals, and they have like school while they're there. They're invited, they go, and they meet each other. They have sessions during the festival. They get to meet different filmmakers. They have workshops. They're there for the entire festival in like a VIP status as this academy. This is a great way to go to Berlin, Sundance, Toronto, IDFA, Hot Docs, Vancouver, all the big festivals, and have a very good experience. But ultimately, when you're pitching, you need to know who you're talking to and what do they represent based on the type of project that you're making. You're making a point of view verite film, then you need to find the strands that do point of view verite type filmmaking, and that's not reality, that's not lifestyle, that's not most of the stuff that's on TV, actually. And you need to find those people and be speaking to the right people, because as you go on and you do a second or third film, if you've wasted a lot of people's time because you don't know what you're talking about, or you just want to pitch to everybody under the sun, there's a lot of people, they just get wound up, they've got an idea, and they'll just tell anybody all the time, and you go around the room saying hi to people, and there's this little Tasmanian devil pitcher showing up at every single conversation going, and my idea is, well, you're burning your reputation. You're burning yourself. It's like people are going to just start avoiding you because that's not all they want to be talking about. And so it's a precious thing, and you need to find the appropriate people to present your idea to. So that's like the slots and the specific distributors, the specific genre, the specific format. So therefore, that also emphasizes, what are you making? Are you doing a series? Are you doing a feature? What's your version? Are you doing a 1 hour? Is this like something that can be edited by David Suzuki and it's got a lot of good science in it? Or so you need to also understand at that point the grammar. What are you talking using the right language that is the language of the industry when you're talking to a commissioning editor to get that confidence back from them, that they get the feeling that you know what you're doing, that they can give you money, and that it's going to come back to you. It's going to come back to them with a finished film. So that, again, is this whole process of studying and becoming aware. And that is, I can't emphasize how important that is in the sense of, at lunch, I mentioned to Avi, I said, I can be a little bit sloppy now because I kind of know who I'm talking to. And we've had, I've been doing it, let's say, for 10 years. When I first had my first film and first time I went to Hot Docs, and it was held in hotel rooms. And you'd go into a hotel room, there'd be a TV, and we'd be watching documentaries. It's like I didn't know who anybody was, and it was as big as it could possibly be, and I'd be standing over there, and they'd all be talking because they all knew each other, blah, blah. They were all members of DOC, and I wasn't. And it's like, you have no idea what to do. And at that point, it's really important to know yourself, to know, okay, I'm here, I don't really know what to do, but I know who I am, I know what I want to do, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and basically, I'm going to do it whether anybody here can help me or not. I'm going to get it done because it's in me. Let the boy play the blues. It's in him. It's got to come out, kind of thing. And then over time, a couple of years, a couple of festivals, the same people are going to these festivals, and you see them again. And then it just starts to become like normal. Becomes like, these are just normal people, and they're all trying to do the same thing as me, and they don't have any money either, and they all dislike the same people as you're learning to dislike, or admire the same people, and so you have all the gossip, and you start to get familiar. Okay, what's going on? And then you hear about like Nick Fraser. Who's Nick Fraser? Oh, he's the BBC guy, and everybody knows about him. And it's like at the pitch, if you got to deal with Nick, and if Nick comes in, then everyone will follow Nick, and it's just that familiarization is the most important thing that you can do to get ready. Still no questions? So when it comes right down to it, and I've been kind of saying this, is you've got to be able to tell the story. It's really what it's all about. They want story. And that's just what you need to be able to do. And you've got to be able to do it, as we were saying, succinctly and be articulate. So you got to pay attention to the story arc, the beginning, kind of the middle, the end, even when you don't know what it is. George is singing in both Greek and Chinese at the closing ceremonies of the Athens Olympics. Do you think I know that he's going to be able to do that? Of course not. Do you think that that's what I'm complicatingly telling the commissioning editor? Of course not. Is that the dream? Yes. Is that the objective? Yes. Is that my intention to have it happen? Yes. Will the film document that trying to unfold? Yes. Is that a good film? Yes. So don't go in there like with a scripted documentary, because that's not a documentary. And in most of these kind of environments that I'm talking about, it's about kind of point of view documentary filmmaking. They're not looking for scripted documentaries. It depends on your genre, if it's all historical or this or that, or there's ways to like script out films, documentaries, but don't be obliged to script out because you think that's what they want. And that's not what they want. So you're not apologizing for what is the unknown. That's the journey of delving in to a good documentary. What is going to happen? The saying of a good documentary raises more questions than it answers is a phrase often used. But you got to pitch the true story. Okay, you got to tell the story that's in your heart that you tend to do. And when a commissioning editor challenges you in an about face that you listen to and contemplate and know at this point anyways, that's not what you're interested in doing. You can't fake like you're interested in doing that and be then switching your pitch, going, yeah, okay, okay, that's what I'll do. And then somehow miraculously having them believe you, but you have no intention of doing that because you're just creating bad relationships all around that will come back to, will ambush you later on as you're trying to stabilize these relationships. As I was saying, from the first festival to the 100th festival, I still want to have my reputation, my honor, or whatever it is. I want to be respected. And so that's not telling a whole bunch of lies to just satisfy people along the way. So you stand your ground, but you're never afraid of good input either. So, Of course, good stories to pitch, regardless of the relationship to the strand, are issues that are relevant, issues that are timely, issues that, because the objective of the commissioning editor back is, are they going to be able to get an audience? So it's really important to question yourself about what it is that you're trying to present, and trying to say that this is going to be, this is going to be an hour film, this is going to be a feature film, this is going to be a series about the most important thing in your mind, but it's just not important to other people, or the way you bring it out doesn't resonate to third-party people. It's just, it's not there. And you refuse to hear it, or you refuse to listen. When we first were pitching up the Yangtze, and so Young was a student of mine, and then I had done a couple of films in China, so he wanted to do a film in China, so then he came and talked to us. I still remember he's going on this river cruise because his grandfather had already taken him once, so he had seen it. And he's not interested in getting off the boat. And I'm like, you're not going to get off the boat? What are you going to do? Oh, it's above the deck, below the deck, the culture of tourism, the tourism of culture. Hearts of Darkness meets the Love Boat. And they're like, yeah. So anyways, okay. So he goes and he shoots a bit. He gets a bit of a demo. And he gets to pitch it at the Banff DocuMart, which is, at the time was a huge pitch session. And the first questions after are like, well, we saw the stuff on the boat. How are you going to interact with the communities along the river that are being flooded? Oh, I don't know how much of that I want to do. Question 2, same thing. Question 3, same thing. Question 4, same thing. And he's just piling back, I'm not getting off the boat. I'm not getting off the boat. I'm not getting off the boat. And there's a question there of, he's going down the river. He's got maybe an artistic statement that he wants to stay on the boat. Okay, he has the choice of staying with that or just being a little bit more aware of that perhaps he should get off the boat. And how much is that ultimately going to really change the film that he's making? It's not like, don't get on the boat. It's not like, do something else. It's like, you're on the boat. Why don't you get off the boat? And so bullheaded and so like know-it-all-ish, and just putting it back and putting it back and putting it back. And it was just like, oh my God. So be aware when you're developing your idea that there could be strands of that idea that you haven't thought about, or you maybe mistakenly shut down. And you're going to be hearing over and over again, well, that's not really the best idea from, like the people want you to get off the boat. They want to know what's going on the shore as it's flooding. The film is totally that in the long run, because it had to be. But he burned his bridges for like 2 years, just kind of refusing to, address that and reconsider. And I say it a little bit harshly like that because I was in that dialogue with him, and it's like, Young, you're not even listening. It's like, we're not trying to control you here. It's like, the story is so much about getting off the boat. Why don't you just try walking along? So finally we convinced him to go on with the cruise liner did a recruitment for the staff. And what they did is they went along the road, they went to the villages along the river, to the high schools to hire local kids to work on the boats in the summer. And he did it. And he went on that, followed that, and that completely changed his mind and made him realize where the story lied. But it's kind of the same thing about when you are deciding on your partners and that, to realize a wrong partner. So at the time of the DocuMart, Bob Culbert was working for CTV, and CTV had the most money to make documentaries. And I had made the film George with Bob, and I didn't have problems with him because Bob always would say 2 things to me. And I'll try to have an Irish accent. All my accents are all the same. But, will it be funny, Danny? And I'd go, yeah, it'll be funny. Will there be girls, Danny? Yeah, there'll be girls. Don't worry. He'll keep asking the same 2 things, and he was happy. Then we went to him with a film we made called RIP, Remix Manifesto, and he was in. And Bob's in. It's like, shit, like, you're going to get like a bunch of money, and it's going to be, you're going to be able to make your theatrical film. Is Celine Dion going to be in the movie? No, I don't think Celine Dion's going to be in the RIP movie, Bob. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay, then what about Shania Twain? Okay, so finally, after a couple of story sessions, like, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about in relationship to this movie. We don't have a good partnership going on here. These are not the people that are going to be in the movie at all. This is not the audience for the movie. How do you feel about it? Well, I need either Shania Twain, Alanis Morissette, or who was the first one? Celine Dion in the movie. So we gave him back the money, because when you take development money, that is not grant money. If you get 15, because that's what you're looking for. When you go there to the pitch, to the table, you're trying to get somebody to seed you some development money, really, because that's the first step in the relationship. It's like when you go on a date and do a good night kiss, and you take it from there, right? When you get that development money, that will become part of your production budget. So it's not like if your production budget's $100,000 and they gave you $15,000, then they're going to give you another $85,000. They're not going to give you what adds up to be $115,000. And then if you go do the development and then go to another, let's say, broadcaster, and they take the film, $15,000 has to go back to the guy that gave you the $15,000. So we gave Bob back his money, and we both agreed to disagree, and then we went and found someone else to make the film with. And that was a better decision to do than to have made that film and somehow tricked Bob, or tried to bail out on the idea and make a remix manifesto film with Shania Twain and Celine Dion. I don't know what that would have turned out to be like, but it didn't seem healthy. Yeah. Pardon? Yes? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Question. Did you wait until you went into production to give the money back, or did you literally find 15 grand, pay them off so that you were free and clear to go to someone else?
I don't exactly remember. I know that we both knew that we weren't going to work together again. I imagine it was when we're going to go find money so that we can pay you back. Right. Basically, this isn't going to continue. Yeah. All that to say, Bob's a great guy. Yeah. So what do? We're filmmakers. So what's the key thing here? It's the video, right? So you can do all the talking that you want, but ultimately it's getting more and more a necessity in documentary, especially, that you have to deliver some kind of a demo, because that's the language. That's the language that they need to know that you have a control on. The language of cinema, the grammar of cinema. I mean, you've gotten to the point of the demo because you're talking to the right person, because you've been able to articulate your story or your one-liner, but all you're really doing is trying to get to the demo. So a couple of ways to think about it. If we were to talk about how to do a demo in one of these forum sessions, where I advise, if it's in your makeup at all, to get to apply and try to present your idea at a forum, you should do it. Because when you're up there, you have undivided attention from the room, from all the players, and you have all the resources, kind of like I do now. If I want to do interpretive dance now, you're all going to politely sit there while I do my interpretive dance, and you're not going to be able to pitch your idea in that way at the cocktail party, probably, hopefully. So in that 7 minutes, the way that we do it, and I'll show you a couple, is we roll picture through the entire 7 minutes. And we always go up with 2 people, and then if there needs to be a third who is a partner who needs to be there for us to be eligible, we let them have their 15 seconds, usually right at the front. And what we do is, because you can get lost, and you can get lost in the headlights and get nervous and lose a bit of time, the thing is that you have to end on time, because they buzz and they stop. They've gotten a little bit softer now, but back when it was first starting, it was like there was a clock, like an arena hockey clock, ticking down with a big buzzer. And it was like, ah! And it didn't matter what you were doing, you just got buzzed. So you have to end on time. And you'll be there, and there'll be 6 of yous, and the first one will go, and they'll be clearly in the middle of like just telling you the conclusion to this fascinating story, and buzz, and you're like, yeah, that guy didn't even finish, man. There's no way he's gonna have much luck. So what we would do is we would time things out so that we would have clips that were just MOS, without sound, and then we'd have sections that would either be in sync or wild, because we'd play the video, and that would be canned sound on the video. And that would help block us. So if we started this, let's say we started and we had 40 seconds of intro, at like the 44th second, something with sound would come on the screen. So if we were falling behind, we'd get pinched. So that's fine. Then we get a minute to regroup and find our notes and get ready. The sound stops. We chirp back in again and go. And if there's going to be 3 minutes of dialogue, then that's never going to be done by one person. That's going to need to be done by 2 people in case, because you're going to need to be helped out in case you're falling behind or you just get into stutter mode or can't deal with it. Your buddy's going to knows they have their point to go on from, but they also know your lines in case they just need to interject while you're going, and well, you know, and you just keep going. And then the canned sound will come in again, and then end, and then you'll have 20 seconds of talking to do at the very end where it ends, and you just, all your chunks basically stay on time. In the worst case scenarios, you don't get a couple of words in one of those chunks. And that's the way we've always done our pitches. And that's how I can best describe it to you, that it's bookended, basically, and it flows images through the whole thing. So there's questions around that, like, are they looking at the screen instead of looking at you? You know, are they reading the, you know, maybe there's some subtitle or graphic up there and not paying attention to your pitch? Well, you just think about those things with the demo. You don't make it too busy. You don't make it too complicated. And after they've looked at you for 30 seconds, they don't really need to be looking at you anyways. If you can be showing your character, you know, feeding a starving duck or rescuing a young child or something, well, that's probably more productive anyways. Then in the, let's just see where we, yeah. Yeah.
And you're talking about a hot dog specifically, right? In that case, are you?
Yeah, like that would be the large forum, yeah.
So the videos you're playing back, would that be your demo, and were those typically funded, or have you ever gone there with sort of unfunded development that created a demo and you've shown up anyway, or are you always there with the broadcast partner?
Well, it's laxed a little bit in the last few years, but it always was the case that at like the Hot Dogs Forum or the ITFA Forum, you had to have a business partner who was already committed to like 25% or something like this of your project just to be eligible. So, and they were supposed to come up with you and announce that they were your business partner and say, and these are such great filmmakers, and I'm behind them, and all my colleagues should get behind them too.
I did it once, and it was terrible. It just seemed like a Thunderdome out there with all these people around, you know. And we actually had a technical staff that prevented our playback from going on time. And literally, we were there, Bob, the producer basically had this soft shoot while we ran another DVD or something up to the back, and they hit play. So we got pinched to the back, but you know, it worked out timing-wise that we didn't get thrown off too badly. But it was terrible.
Yeah, it's well, one thing they used to do. I noticed they didn't do it this year, but there used to be a bottle of scotch, and you could take a shot. And I would strongly recommend you never pass that up, or even take two, and then get started. But I mean, part of it is being there with a buddy. So really, when you're starting filmmaking, one of the things that you're looking to do is finding your little nouveau vague. You know, the people in your film school that feel like you, that are like-minded, that want to work the way you want to work, that, you know, you can help, when you're starting, you can help produce them, they can help produce you. I mean, where there's a shortage, I imagine it's like that in drama too, is a shortage of good producers. There's no shortage of wannabe filmmakers, but it's hard to get a good producer. And when you're young, starting off, and you don't come with an automatic budget, well, that's a little bit harder too, because people are working for like next to nothing. So when I was starting EyeSteelFilm and made Spit, I met a young guy named Mila who still works with me today. He was basically working for experience with me, and then his wife got pregnant. And so I went, oh shit, like, dude, we don't have any money yet. We were trying to get some cable fund money from Rogers. And so I gave him 50% of the company, because really 100 times nothing is nothing, and 50 times 1 or 2, you know, it comes back to 100. And we stuck together, and, you know, we worked together, and that teamwork and that solidarity, I think, is really essential. Just like you would find in DOC. So, I mean, the other way of creating the video is if you're doing a one-on-one. Yes.
Given that you seem to be doing a lot of work to get this picture together, and given that the technology to make films is incredibly inexpensive these days, one of my questions is why bother? Why not just make the film?
Well, yeah, of course, you can do that. It's a good question. The first films I made that way. Got started and well, like you get an Arts Council grant or some money from CAM, and get the film made. But really, when you're putting together a one-liner, you're telling the story, you're putting together a demo, you're actually making the movie. You're actually developing the ideas. You're working it through. So in some ways, you're doing this stuff. You're also making the film, and you're hoping that some financing will catch up to you by the back end. That's more often than truth than not. So you pitch it a couple of times. By year 2, or if you're in early production or you're finishing production, your demo's just getting better, and you get some money. They come in and it gets you through post-production, because it's a little bit different, but still post-production is expensive. Even if you can do everything yourself, by the time you're onlining or you're mixing, and not everybody has all those tech specs. And then that starts to cost some money. And by then, if you've been doing some of this stuff, then there's a good chance that you're going to get some money, because they've been following you. You've been delivering. You're the little engine that could. You're getting up that hill. They start to know you a little bit better. They've seen an early demo. Now they've seen a much better demo a year later. And it's like, yeah, we can come in with, $30,000. And you also have a broadcast license, which then opens up a lot. When you do get a broadcast license, it opens up the ability to apply to a lot of other funds that require that as part of the application prerequisites.
So if you turn up a product, they don't necessarily take you all that seriously.
Well, that's called an acquisition as opposed to a pre-sale or a commission. No, but they tend to be at many channels. They can possibly be different people. Person that does acquisitions is not the person that does commissions. It depends on the size of the channel. When you have completed projects, maybe the best thing to do is put it in the library during festival. If you're in the festival, well, that's one thing, because then you can push. The other one is many of the people that work in these places that buy stuff, they don't go to the theater. They just go to the library. They sit there all day and they watch all kinds of stuff, and then they buy stuff. And that's an important place. That's an important place to have your film. So like when I go to IDFA or I go to Hot Docs, and it took me a long time to learn this, I often now will go and just hang out where the video library is, because actually the people that I want to schmooze are going there. They're not going to the public films in the theaters unless it's their own. Rarely, by then it's night and they're on expense accounts and they're drinking wine and eating brie. But during the day, they'll spend a lot of time the day before or the day after. Mostly it's after. What was the market? So they come in for the market, and then they stick around for a little bit after, and they go to the library. And then you hang out at the library and try to, keep your poster up there, put some postcards out, just help make sure that people watch the film. But that's acquisition. Like when you're at a market and your film is finished and you're trying to get their attention, but they're watching 15-minute pitches and they're looking at demos and they're there to find new projects, to try to get them to watch your finished film is like a different headspace. It's not the same thing. So always go with all your elements ready. You need a Vimeo link. If you have access to a server or something like that, so that you can send a link so that with a password or whatever, so they can watch the movie. You have it on a little USB key. You have it on a DVD. You have all the kind of options. You have a business card. You have a little postcard. You have a one sheet. You kind of have to invest in this stuff. And then you have a larger presentation for someone who's genuinely interested. And you have your demo. And then you have your demo on a laptop. And when they're sitting at the table, the objective is to get them to watch the demo. So lots of little things there, like headphones. So they won't use your earbuds, but they'll use headphones. And you got the dilemma with women who have really fancy hair. So you got to let them know it can come up from here because they don't want to put it over this way because they've spent too much money at the salon, and that happens. Then you have that they come together, two of them, but you have one set of headphones. You have to have a splitter, and you have to have two sets of headphones. That's just really rude. Like your mom would never let that happen at one of her salon picnics, you know, that someone would just be sitting over there not getting served while the other ones were all getting all the attention. So you have to have a splitter, and you have to have two sets of headphones so that they can both watch it. And you know, it has to be 3, 4, 5 minutes is long. 5 minutes, it's like amazing. You're just watching them, and they're going to, I mean, they have the attention, they've got trained attention spans of like 3 minutes kind of thing. And that's like hard, right? Like who wants to present their film in 3 minutes? But it's a speed date type thing. But you have a 5 minute, you have a 12 minute, you have a 25 minute, you have these other, well, depending on how much you've shot, if you know, and you don't over edit. You don't make demos that are like coming soon, blah, 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 blah. They want to see a scene. They want to see the character like they're going to see in the movie and get a sense of what's going on here. And if they really like that scene or that moment makes them tear up or is just overwhelming, they're into your movie. That's what they want to see. They want to see a little bit of your movie. You can't always do that because you haven't always shot it. So then it's like, let them know what the story is going to be using the internet, using archival footage, using, you know, you go fishing and you find the way to build a little demo. It's a little less relevant at that point, but you can still do it. We've done both ways. But you have longer ones because if they're interested, they're going to make another appointment with you. And if they're interested, you have to make sure to make that other appointment that night. Because when they go back to Italy or they go back to Toronto, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get in touch with them again. So you have to like be alert, be astute, and go, this person's interested. They're following. Okay, so we need to meet again later. Let's meet again later. And they'll meet you later when they have more time. And you'll sit somewhere and they'll watch your 20 minutes of rushes. Or they'll just talk more with you about where they're at and their thinking and your thinking. And when you're at the table and they're watching the video, you have to really just have a lot of common sense. Like, don't be doing other stuff while they're watching the video. It's amazing. They put the headphones on, and then my buddy starts talking on his cell phone. Blah, 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 blah. And then they start looking at Buddy because he's talking on the cell phone. It's like, no. Like, this is their table. They sit there so that what they get to see if they look up is the wall, so that they put their eyes back down onto your laptop, and you guys don't fidget around. You just sit there quietly. You stay there and wait. Make sure that it's playing. One of you has to be able to see the screen at the same time so that when they, you know, go like this and go, they're done, you know when they did it, so to speak, right? What's working, what's not working. And that's really important. And that's just little silly stuff. But I get hyper, and I get up and I start pacing around. And it's like, I remember when I was, you know, I have to make myself just sit there and sit still while that's going on so that they'll watch the video and not be doing other things. And I mean, it's so important that I went from the video to the demo, which is the same damn thing, and I'm just doing it again. You have to have a demo. It's like, it's a perfect example that gentleman said, like, you can just make your film. You can. And really, as a producer, I only work with filmmakers on projects that would get made if they got money or not. And then those are the ones that I want to try to help them find money. And then that gives us the ability to find what I like to call good money, relevant money, by partners that are only going to make the whole process stronger and better, and not be doing the opposite of me. Characters, it's obvious, I think, after seeing the George one, how important that is. And in that demo, there's just lots of photos of George as a magician, as a clown, as a standing there in his GQ bazooki look and whatever. But anything that you can do to show your relationship with the character, and anything the character that you can bring that shows that the character can handle being in a film, because they're an actor. It's really important if they're photogenic. They're good speakers. They have that spontaneity. They can really interact. If you can, even validating that, even though you don't have them at the Greek Olympics, but you have them in a room and they really can work the room, that they're charming or controversial, they're Patrick Watson or whoever, and you get those moments, that is like a way to build a demo, to validate that what's going to happen is what will our final result will be captivating to the audience. It can hold an audience. So if your character can come with you, if that's an added bonus, or like in our case, George had a CD, so we made sure that everyone got the CD, and it's all him singing in Greek and Chinese, so it's kind of exactly making the point. So just really establishing you have that strong relationship with your character in documentary is really important. I mean, there are documentaries about war-torn environments and stuff where you're not bringing characters up front and stuff. There are issues in journalism type films that aren't suitable to that, and you don't follow the same platform. But I mean, a lot of the films are character driven, that's for sure, and it's really an important aspect. And there's always the question of release forms. So you just want to think about that. You just want to be able to make sure that the commissioning editor, financer is very confident that the relationship you have with the character can sustain the next 3 years. That's how long the relationship usually is, to get a feature doc finished. And they have the ability to, on camera, carry it off. And then, other than that, it's basically really obvious. You just need to have access and be able to, if you can do anything on location or really around the event that the film is that you're pitching, that's the best kind of demo to get. So as we were continuing with the George film, he performed July 1st for Canada Day in Ottawa, in the sub kind of ethnic area of the Canada Day events. He wasn't on Parliament Hill. But so that was a perfect opportunity for us to go from Montreal to Ottawa, wasn't that far, and take a day and film him doing his thing and just, get him to interact a little bit, speak Chinese, speak Greek, and of course, half the audience were Chinese people because they're just enchanted with George. Greeks don't like him. He's just to the Greeks, he's just a bad bouzouki player, because there's a lot of them, and they're better. But to the Chinese, there's only one George, and big hairy Greek George, who sings in Chinese. So he's, and so just trying to be around him in some of those environments and get some of it so that you can build a demo, because there's the issue of money always, right? And you don't always have money to go to China to build a demo, to come back to try to find the money. It's just not reasonable. So you have to think of other ways to have material. I'll show you a demo in a minute that has everything is basically from the internet or invented in other ways. I started off with that little blurb from Werner Herzog. We did a little film for IDFA back in the day about pitch training, sort of, and we made a character named Ethan who was going to be the perfect pitcher, but he's not a filmmaker. It was kind of like just pulling someone out of the woodwork and then trying to teach them to be able to present a film. There was a bit of a trick thing that we did at IDFA where we prearranged with IDFA that we'd be able to pitch, and then we pitched a film that was like a fake film, and it was, I don't know, it was weird, but they paid us to do it, so we did it. And that's your challenge, is that you will always end up with this certain cynicism, because the people you're pitching to in documentary, majority of the times, are television people, and they use words like eyeballs, and they want things to fit into their slots, and it's very hard when you're presenting your idea and you're earnest, and if you believe in it, you have to be prepared for the long haul, because very rarely are the earnest, most sincere, important documentaries that arguably stand the test of time and become classics are not the ones that are easy to make. They take that extra bit of time. Alan King was pitching at this is several years ago at Hot Docs at the TDF forum, and it was just embarrassing. It's like most of the people at the table were younger, and they didn't know who he was. And at one point, Rudy Boutignon had to stand up and just basically stop the pitch session and go, this can't be happening. This guy is a master filmmaker with a legitimate idea. Well, he was his partner up there. And they just basically sent him home. Like, you want to do what? It's like, you can't do that on TV. Huh? Well, he got his film made, and of course, it's an Alan King film, so it's a classic. And you see that, like the same thing when we talk to Werner Herzog. This pitching stuff, it's hard because on one level it's meant to be business, and it is a business. And yet, you want to work in a more art form and just have respect and be given freedom. You don't want to be controlled. So it's always this kind of balance. And in some way, having a bit of this cynicism back towards where you're pitching can be healthy to survive. It's like, not taking, like, you take yourself seriously, but in your product seriously, and your film seriously, but you can't take the pitching too seriously. One person hears what you have to say and likes it and comes and talks to you later. It's the opportunity to present your idea, and that influences the whole community at large. You're up there. We know the makers know that documentary is important and will always survive. And if they can broadcast, the proverbial they can broadcast all the lifestyle and factual entertainment and reality they want, we know that in the long run they'll never really kill point of view documentary filmmaking. It's not possible. So in the ups and the downs, as you go bankrupt or not, or find money or not. So if today at 5 o'clock there's some young pitcher and they're like passionate and they're like presenting their idea, you're going to go up to them afterwards and go, way to go, that was really good and that's really important, and you'll get that film made and stick with it, and it's important. So you take the lumps with it, or the embarrassing moments. I remember going with Brett, and Nick and Meta were eating lunch or something, and Brett was trying to get his remix film made, and they were there, and I said, go, you have to go. They're just sitting there alone. Like, you have to go say hi, and yada, yada. And I'd already worked with both of them on George by then. And so I said, this is Brett. And then Brett started talking, and Nick looked at him and said, get the hell out of here. You're just annoying, and I'm trying to have a coffee with my friend, and like, F off. I was like, doop-a-doop-a-doop. So, it's like anything can happen. And their memories are short. They're just swamped all the time. Things that happen to you happen once, and it's like the center of your universe, and oh my God, everybody thinks I'm the biggest idiot. But nobody really remembers. It's if you're genuine and you're trying and you're not just, being a scam artist, it just ebbs and flows, Young went from like totally screwing up at Documart with Up the Yangtze to making, in recent memory, the most successful theatrical documentary in Canada. And the film was huge. And nobody really remembers that day then or whatever, and you chalk it up to experience and you keep going. So that has a lot to do with the next one, which is basically the team. And it always goes back to have a buddy. When you're in the speed dating, you can play good cop, bad cop. One of you can cut the person off, get to the point, make sure you leave with the business card, because you got to have the business card to follow up. Because, the thing about the business card is it has even the postal code on it. It's like you know who this person is, you know their title, you have their phone number, you have all the credentials, not just Lorenzo from Rye, Italy, and then later you try to figure out his last name and what the address is and where in Italy is he and stuff like that. And we saw in there Jean-Pierre Laurendeau saying, I need to know that this is going to be made by a good filmmaking team, because they can ruin a good idea. So like when we were talking about strengths or weaknesses, you need to build around you something stable to help give confidence, because basically you're asking for a loan, so you need a co-signer to get a loan. You're basically asking people to give you money, so they want to make sure their investment is safe. Well, when I was doing The Street and I was working on weekends at the film board, there was one other idiot working on the weekends at the film board, and that was Peter Wintonic, who many people will know because he's just, he's the elephant in the room, in the sense that he's been there forever and he won't ever go away. And he was making Chomsky, and I just started meeting him on the way to the bathroom and the fountain and this and that. And because I was around like a rink rat, he helped me. And I remember trying to get a mix at the film board through the PAFs back in the day. And Grace Averith, who was the administrator, said, yes, you can get a mix in 7 months. And it was kind of like, So I was all bummed out, and I went and saw Peter, and Peter went, okay, I'll go with you. We'll see what we can do. And I got a mix in like 4 weeks, because it's just that kind of status. So he became like my mentor, and then helped me, and it goes on like that. And in documentary, it's like that, right? Like if anybody's going to mentor somebody, it's going to be like a documentary filmmaker. They're like basically the perfect citizens, right? It's kind of social justice, human rights, marching on. So they're definitely, approachable people. So if you can, get an executive producer, or you can get a good DOP, or, something that just helps strengthen your position at the table, it's advisable and important. And the ultimate thing is, why you? Why are you pitching me this idea? And you're a new filmmaker. Well, first of all, as Murray was saying earlier today, he works a lot with first filmmakers. The hardest thing is a filmmaker's second film. First films often are these films, these stories that have been sitting with someone for your whole life. It's like you're not reading the newspaper looking for a film. It's your third or fourth film looking for a subject. It's like everyone has like this story, or desire to or tell something, and that's you, and you can do it the best, and that's really the collateral that you bring to the table, and that's the kind of film you need to be pitching, especially when you're starting. So a clever idea, or like a well-surveyed out idea, that's less likely to work than a story that is like the story you got to tell, and you can tell it the best, and you can deliver that passion, and you stick with it. People will help you get it done, and then and when you're starting, if you get into a festival, well, now you're a filmmaker. Right? Now you can start to apply to other places. You start to have that status and build that momentum. And then budget. All I want to say about budget is get a grasp on the total of what your budget is before you start publicizing it, because you have to fundraise to that point. And if it's unreasonably high, that's going to cause you problems, and if it's unreasonably low, that's going to cause you problems. When you start getting into equity financiers, if it's grants and small things like that, it's not really much of an issue. Just get the money and make the film and take those steps, and if you need more later, you try to raise more later. And of course, follow-up is everything. And the best way to follow up is to become part of the community and participate in events and be seen and start, because you will start to have literacy for what's going on around you. You'll know people, you'll know what they represent, you'll know who you're supposed to speak to, you'll know how to speak to people to get to where you need to speak to people. And you'll be able to gossip with them because you were around when the funny thing happened. Venues to pitch. Well, the Gladiator is like what we call the Forum, which I've been talking about. The main ones are the are ITFA and Hot Docs. And again, the points there of meeting the moderator to plant the first question and all the things we had discussed just a minute ago.
On-Screen Manitoba is an innovative membership-driven association that leads, builds, and represents the Manitoba screen-based industry.